Hello, listeners. Before we get started with this week's show, I have a little surprise that I want to share with you all. I can't share all the details, but I can tell you that I am going to be appearing on a very special national platform podcast later this month. I can't tell you exactly which one yet, but just know this. It's a major conversation and you do not want to miss the episode. It goes live on October 28th. So be sure you're subscribed to Divorce and Beyond and follow along on the Divorce and Beyond Pod Instagram account, and you'll be the first to know when it drops. I can't wait to hear what you all think.
Coming up on today's episode of the Divorce and Beyond podcast.
When we're going through this process to try to find the answers, if people realize just what the game is, it takes off a lot of the pressure. It takes off a lot of the guilt, the shame, the pain, and allows them to find themselves in a happy place and go on without the kid. Many parents can't. Others, slowly.
Hello, and welcome to the Divorce and Beyond podcast. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host. As a top divorce attorney and family law mediator for 30 years, I know what you need to know to get through your divorce, and most importantly, how to move beyond it to thrive and transition to your new future. My experts and I are here to give you the insider view into the process, so listen in for the wisdom and expert information you need on your journey through divorce and beyond. Welcome back to Divorce and Beyond. I'm Susan Guthrie, your host, and today we're tackling one of the most heartbreaking ripple effects of toxic relationships, and that is estrangement. If you have ever been suddenly cut off by your adult child, often without warning or explanation, you know the pain, confusion, and grief that follow. Even loving, supportive parents can find themselves shut out. Not because of anything they did, but because of the lies, manipulation, and control at the hands of a partner who exhibits narcissistic behaviors. My guest today, who has been with us several times before in some very popular episodes, is Tracy Malone. Tracy is one of the foremost experts on narcissistic abuse and the ways these destructive relationships fracture families. Tracy is a coach, author, and the founder of NarcissistAbuseSupport.com, which is a global resource helping victims in more than 145 countries reclaim their lives after emotional abuse. Importantly, she's also a survivor herself, and her wisdom comes not just from research and coaching, but from lived experience. Tracy's latest book, out now, is called Estranged by Lies: How Narcissistic Partners Use Power and Control to Destroy Your Family. And that book pulls back the curtain on the narcissistic playbook, exposing the gaslighting, smearing, and rewriting of history that can steal your adult child and devastate entire families. In this episode, Tracy and I dive deep into what estrangement really is, how it differs from alienation, and why it's happening today in record numbers. And most importantly, what strategies you can use to cope, find validation, and begin healing. This is a powerful and emotional conversation, and if you've ever felt alone in estrangement, Tracy's message will remind you it's not your fault, and you are not alone. Well, Tracy, I'm so delighted to have you back again. It has been a while, but now that you have your new book, I had to get you back on to talk about it. You're just telling me it's doing really well. I'm delighted to hear that. So let's dive in and talk about estrangement, because people may be thinking, oh, Tracy's moving into a new area, but this really does flow from your work with your clients, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I have been working with people who have narcissistic parents for 10 years, helping them possibly get away. Those situations are, an abusive, narcissistic parent, mom or dad, that have affected the adult child. With estrangement, the difference is that these were really healthy and strong, loving family. There's no narc part in 90% of them, right? So it is a shock to parents that this is happening. And, I see the overlap, the patterns of this is exactly by the book for a narcissist, and to me, one of the things that was my impetus to writing this book, I have a lot of books on my shelf right over there that are on estrangement, and they might have a chapter on daughters or son-in-laws, but they really do not talk about the narcissistic factor of the control, the smearing, the lying, the gaslighting, the how they happened. They aren't getting into that, and it honestly pisses me off. I was in a series of webinars with one of those book writers on my shelf, and it was for estranged parents. And someone asked in the comments, I think I have a narcissistic son-in-law. What should I be doing? And he completely invalidated them and said he was sick of YouTubers trying to convince everyone they were narcissistic. And I'm like, you don't know this person. Like, you can't judge that because it's a buzzword. It really pissed me off. I'm like, that's not fair. I watched all of the 40 parents' faces go, oh, their hope was gone. If they can see it, I'm not saying everyone is a narcissist. I'm saying if it looks like a duck and it talks like a swan, and we're doing the same tactics, you're likely to have these as strategies to help you. Again, we're not calling anyone a narcissist. It doesn't make a difference if you do. But if you see these patterns, avoid that. This is how you're going to get trapped. This is what they're going to do to you. Knowing those things is going to be all the difference.
Well, Tracy, this is why you are one of the top experts on this topic, because everything that you just said, we've talked about it on your other episodes, and it's, that term narcissist is the clickbait, right? I'm sure there are people who clicked on this episode to listen because somehow I'll have worked that word into the title. But we know that that's really not the key. It doesn't matter if you call someone a narcissist. I mean, it doesn't matter in how you deal with it. It's noticing the behaviors and then having, you said the key word here, right? The strategies for dealing with the behaviors. But you also used another term that I want to jump in on first, because it's really at what lies at the root of this episode and why you wrote this book. And it's this idea of estrangement. And there's many words that are thrown around in the legal world, in the world of YouTube and podcasts. But let's dive into your definition, what you're talking about when you're talking about estrangement.
Sure. So estrangement is with a adult child and the parents, for one thing. A lot of people misunderstand alienation with this. Very similar, but that's usually a parent, convincing a child not to talk. In this case, there's a third party influence of a narcissistic. It could be in-law, son or daughter, and it could also just be a partner. They're not even married yet, but they're taking and doing all of these strategies to secure their position before they get married, right? So with estrangement, what happens is they marry the narcissist or they are with the narcissist, and things start to ebb and change. The good, loving parents that were welcomed by the narcissist in the beginning, because they were love bombing them too, in order to get their sign off. Oh, we love them. They're so wonderful for you. And then they all start to change, every single normal narcissistic pattern, right? And the variance of estrangement can be complete nothing, 10 years, not a word, don't know where they lived, they moved away, never saw the grandchildren, to the extremes of maybe being able to see your grandchildren, but supervised, like you're going to poison the children.
You're going to do something to your own grandchildren,
exactly,
right? Because you're dangerous.
You're a danger. You're a threat to our family. They stop coming to everything. It's just a slow wean of we don't have time for you. Oh, we're doing something else. And those things are normal. It's the lying. This is what you did. You said this. And like, none of these things are true. Every single parent struggles with that never happened, right? So it's the rewriting of history that really points the arrow more towards the narcissist than any other kind of estrangement, because your child is now echoing and puppeting the lies. And you're like, that didn't happen. Tell me what more about it. And they have nothing because it didn't happen. So such a painful, horrible thing, whether you're cut off a little or it just doesn't sound like your child anymore. And that everyone says, it's just like, I feel like the partner's answering the emails or texts. I'm guarded. I'm not allowed to say what I really think because they'll get upset. And it just puts you in a position of losing control of your family. And it affects everyone, not only the parents, but siblings. Siblings are either threatened with the loyalty of, I should be loyal to mom and dad. How dare you do this? Or I think I'll stay with my brother or sister to kind of have an intel, but then they're walking on eggshells and the parents could be pissed at them, right? So, or they get cut off completely as well. So that affects if the brother or sister has children. They will never see their aunts and uncles, right? It's a huge effect. Even grandparents who loved their great grandchildren are never allowed to see them again. And they're going, what did I do?
Right. Where did this come from? Well, and that's, I think, a key factor in what you're talking about here is these are not families with histories of trauma and drama and estrangement. This is something that comes about when the children are not children, when the children are adults in most cases and have entered into new maybe partnerships or familial situations. And there's this external influence. And it has to be because these, as you mentioned earlier, these are, warm, loving relationships, familial relationships that with the advent of this new factor become not only not warm and loving, but almost non-existent or non-existent, depending. This has to be incredibly traumatizing for those parents or extended family members.
I have parents that don't eat, don't sleep. They're down to 90 pounds from 180. I mean, they are losing, they just can't sleep. They can't eat. They can't focus. They can't see their friends. They can't be happy. Even seeing their grandchildren reminds them of what they've lost with their other child, right? So it can really twist up the family's entire ecosystem. Holidays, oh my God, we're going into them now, aren't we, right? So as the holidays come, there's no greater reminder than an empty chair.
Yeah. Oh, and I mean, it just amplifies the sadness, but it's a trauma that goes on. And one of the things that I'm thinking of here, because you were talking about the person who's new into this family dynamic, right? This new partner exhibiting some of those behaviors we were talking about, love bombing and all of that. And I think one of the behaviors we've talked about before in your books and on the other episodes is the effort that someone who exhibits these narcissistic behaviors has to sort of separate that person from their support system, right? Which is obviously a family. A close family has to feel even more threatening to a person who has the narcissistic tendencies. So, I think it's an interesting dynamic here that maybe people aren't even noticing. Obviously, you're an expert, you see it right away, but the people living through it probably don't even realize that these narcissistic behaviors are going on, right? With the gaslighting and the love bombing and et cetera.
All of that. I mean, that's the part that turns it into narcissistic is, oh gosh, the triangulation and control, right? This positions the narcissist as the gatekeeper. You'll go through me now. You can't talk to your child directly. The gaslighting where they rewrite history, they plant seeds of doubt in your child's mind going, like if you think about it, there's things that they say that I want to read a couple that I wrote down, but things that they'll say to your adult child that slowly gaslight them. Like, your dad was really controlling. Did you notice that? Was he always like that after you leave, right? Every time I'm with your parents, I feel like they make me feel like I'm not good enough. Or your mom looks at me funny. Just because they bought us a house doesn't mean they can control that we buy a Range Rover. That's financial abuse. Do you see how they're abusing you? This is the insanity of it. But they also do it to not only family. Most families are core to the last of the estranged. Friends, cut off. And friends, like, oh, they never really supported you. Only I understand you. Things like that are just the twisted ways that they control your child's mind to turn them against their best friends, right? So this is like the poison is working. And when we look at these factors of that kind of control, we see isolation, another hallmark of narcissism, right? They always have to do this so that they can preserve their thing. The smearing, the weaponizing of loyalty. It's them or me. I'm your family now. I can't tolerate them in my life. Pick me or pick them, or you'll never see your kids again, right? Again, the normal narcissistic threats now taken with a different player in the game. What we miss in normal estrangement conversations that I am, again, pissed off is this invisible role. The behind the scenes, there's someone pulling puppet strings and the parent has nothing they can do or say about it.
Yeah. What's worse than being powerless in a horrible situation, right? It just makes the horrible situation worse. And it's striking me that this is very much like a pebble, right? Dropped in the water. The pebble is the person with the narcissistic behaviors getting dropped into your family structure, not into your life directly as a parent, but into your child's life. So now your child is in the relationships that you and I have talked about, and that many of our listeners, right, that are maybe getting divorced from a narcissist. I'm putting that in quotes, everyone, but right. That's the core relationship. But now the relationship we're talking about and the estrangement we're talking about is one of the ripple factors of that core relationship. And now you're helping, with these clients that you're working with, you're helping the tertiary family members who are being removed from the target's life. But we were just talking about this factor of being blamed for things that you never did, being told that things happened that never did, right? That all of these things, and you have no power in the paradigm. There's very little that you can do. So let's talk about, you work with these people. This has to be devastating. What are some coping mechanisms you try and help them with?
Well, I think the most important thing is learning emotional regulation, right? Because it's trigger, and no recovery. Like normally it's a trigger, you get a little recovery, you get back on the horse and it starts, right? This is constant rapid fire. And so their emotions are all over the place. So, one of the things I do, which is, again, I'm not going to get the whole explanation, but I have parents evaluate, like you were at the doctor, what's your pain level, the smiley face or the sad face,
Right.
Where are you, a 1 to 10? And then I go dig deeper. If you're a 7, is it anger that you're experiencing right now? Is it fear? Is it hurt? Is it pain? Is it this? Identify what you're feeling, because there's a good chance by doing that, it's not an 8. It might be a 4. And if you can start to regulate yourself in that functionality levels, you will know not to reach out to your children if you are at a 9, because if you don't get hurt, you don't get an answer, you're going to go into a 14 and you're not going to be able to get out of bed for a week, right? So if you by understanding it and understanding why you went, I was a 4 yesterday, but today I'm a 7. Why? What happened? Well, nothing happened. Well, what are you thinking? What's making you feel? Like look into it and realize it's the same as yesterday. I don't have to hold this horrible feeling I'm holding right now. I can acknowledge it, understand it, but I'm not going to live in that, because tomorrow is going to be another day and I can't keep giving away my life. And not a lot of parents can get into that, but once they do and they see that they can regulate their own emotions, everything changes. They can sleep, they can eat. They are not afraid to go outside. It's a very painful thing, but by working on just that, on the emotional regulation part, they're like, oh my God, I didn't realize I could do this and help myself. Because these families have never been in narcissistic situations. They didn't have to learn to regulate themselves. Life was good.
I think that's so important. And you just used the word that's really like the critical one here, right? This is if they can control their emotions. We were just talking about the fact that they have no control. And this is one thing, this is what, God, every episode of Divorce and Beyond, almost 400 of them in some way talk about the only thing you can control is yourself in these situations. So knowing that you have some ability to have some control over your emotional regulation has to start giving them back some of their ability to at least work within this construct that they don't have any control over.
Absolutely. And again, I think it's also, besides the emotional regulation, it's also looking at the narc language. Because if we respond to them in a normal way, like you would say to somebody, how does it get twisted? I actually have these cute little hair things that I show people. They just twist whatever you said. If you don't understand that, you're putting out an email or a text to them, it's going to get twisted. It's going to make it worse. So you have to know what not to do and what has got you in trouble before, and how do I do something different, right? Those are the keys for parents to regulate themselves, is empowering. First of all, knowing you're not alone. People have written on, a couple of reviews are in on my book already, and they're like, was she looking in my window? Like, this was my life. And I remember people thinking that when I did my divorce book, and they're like, it's exactly, I've never met these people. It's the same story. It becomes like, okay, this happens next. Now, if you do this, this will help you. And that empowers so many parents.
Yeah, I think it was you I learned this from, and it was when we were talking based on your first book, You Can't Make This Shit Up. I still love that name, and I'll put a link to that episode in the show notes, everyone. So don't worry, you'll be able to go listen to that and Tracy's other episode. If you're aware, you can prepare. We've got a whole bunch of fabulous episodes. But the key point I want to make here is these behaviors come in patterns. And once you start to know what those patterns are, and then you have someone like Tracy who can empower you, you know that what you do to manage those behaviors. And that's where your power starts to really come from. So what you're doing here, I'm hearing in the new book and in the work that you do with the estranged family members, is empower them with the strategies to deal with the behaviors, right?
Absolutely. And, as you were just saying that, another thought came. One of the other goals here is to divide the parents or the family, right? So sometimes it's just one parent that's targeted. And I'd say in my clients, 70% of the clients are moms, because they were the ones who raised the kid. So they were the most important to the child. They were their foundation, and they have to be removed. But okay, in this case, we'll let dad still come and see the children or play golf with the son, but mom, you're cut off forever. And that leaves the mom, or whichever one's being alienated, it leaves them going, what did I do? I was the loving one. I don't understand. How come you get to go? And it creates jealousy. It creates infighting in the family. And there's like, well, you can go, but I want spy information when you come back. Bring me pictures of the grandchildren, things like that. And that puts that parent that's going in an awkward position, right? So it's so complicated, and every situation is different. I tried to cover as many of these in the book, because if I told you that situation and you didn't have it, you'd be like, no, we don't have that. But the ones that do have that, it's like, see, honey, it's not just us. And they can grow from that.
We're going to take a quick break right here, just for a few words from one of our sponsors, but be sure to stick around for the second half of the episode, because Tracy is going to dive deep into how awareness changes everything. Now that you know these patterns, what can you do to help yourself find peace? Listeners, as a bit of a product junkie myself, I am so excited to announce that we have partnered with Blue Mercury, which is your one-stop destination for luxury skincare, makeup, hair care, fragrance, and more, all thoughtfully curated and backed by their expert service. And because you are listening today, Blue Mercury is offering 15% off your first order when you use the special link in our show notes. It's their way of saying thanks for being a part of the Divorce and Beyond family. So just click the link in the show notes, shop your favorites, and enjoy the 15% discount that will be automatically applied to that first purchase. That's 15% off your first order at bluemercury.com. Check your show notes to claim it now. Well, and the grow from it is important for people to know, right? Because as with all of these situations, they can feel so incredibly hopeless. Right. Because of that, there's really, when we talk about managing the behaviors, that's not changing the behaviors. They're still happening, right? It's going to still keep coming. The patterns are going to still continue to happen. Probably the only way those things start to change is if your child who's involved in this new partnership starts their own journey out of that relationship. And then there maybe is a path to reconciliation, but I would imagine that doesn't happen still within the construct of that core relationship staying intact.
It can, but it's rare.
It's rare. Yeah, I would imagine.
Yeah.
And so you're left out there. And I'm thinking about this paradigm that you're talking about of one parent being the in parent and one parent being the out parent. And, think of the power of alienation or estrangement that just gives so much ammo, because this sort of stems from what we've talked about before, but I'm just thinking it as we're talking, when you're in a relationship with someone who exhibits those narcissistic behaviors, you have that tendency to almost act a little crazy because it's crazy making, to be accused of things you didn't do, to be told you said. Well, it has to be the same thing here for these parents or these other family members being accused of things. And then it just gives that person see, I told you your mom was this, that, or controlling or that, because you do something, you react to. I never said that, and you didn't.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that's another narcissistic thing, is to, poke you. It used to be called reactive abuse, right?
Okay.
And the terminology has been, you're just reacting to abuse. You're not actually abusing them.
Well,
so
right.
Your reaction
Yep.
turns into the reason. See, validation. See, your mother's crazy. See, she can't control her emotions. Or sometimes it's the dad who's like, we didn't do that. And they stand firm in their shoes, and then they get kicked out. So it doesn't matter. You're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't. Right. That's part of the whole thing, is you can't do anything right because they will always find fault. No matter what you do, no matter what you say, no matter how many times you've apologized, if you do apologize, see, I told you, she admitted it. She's definitely never seeing our kids again. Well,
right.
you asked
She's
for an
danger.
apology. You can't win.
And you just played into the next round of it. So, I always say that awareness is the first step of the process. So I would imagine, just like all those people who have written the reviews already on the book, and by the way, folks, go do that. The best thing you can do for an author and to help other people is to write a review on the book, because that's what helps others find the book. So little side note there for you all, but I tell you that. But the other aspect here is you're now hopefully aware of the dynamic that's happening. That doesn't mean, again, that it's going to change, that you do not have the control over that underlying relationship that's going on. We've talked about the fact that you do have control over how you react, how you behave within that. So we've talked about some of the tools for coping and moving forward. How do you manage to move forward if reconciliation with your child is not a part of the paradigm?
Well, again, that takes a real lot of work, and it's a horrible journey. It's like losing a child. And I used to start my groups, because I do groups for parents. I used to start them by saying, I've never lost a child, but the pain of estrangement really feels like a death. And yet it's like grief that isn't acknowledged by anyone else. Well, he only lives a block away. Disenfranchised grief is real, right? And so when we're going through this process to try to find the answers, if people realize just what the game is, it takes off a lot of the pressure. It takes off a lot of the guilt, the shame, the pain, and allows them to find themselves in a happy place and go on without the kid. Many parents can't. Others slowly. And I've had people 10 years no contact in my groups. They surrender. They come to my group for final, I see what this is, and this confirmation in their heart to let go. But I keep telling them it's not letting go of the hope. It's letting go of the expectations that they'll be here today, tomorrow, or for Thanksgiving dinner, right? It's coming to a place where you can begin to take back your life, go out with a friend, go out with your spouse, enjoy your other grandchildren, because that's part of the toxic consequences of this. Parents feel guilty if they see their other grandchildren. They're like, well, I'm giving to this child and I didn't give to that child. And, it's a swirl. So coming to the place where whether you are in acceptance and it's a death. I had a woman in that first group I did many years ago, and she raised her hand after I said that. And she said, I did lose a son. And 3 months later, I had this happen with my other only child. And I would take the death because I can process that. It's acknowledged. This is like, it's like you're all alone and nobody is there to help you or throw you a lifeline, like a casserole when your child died. Nobody is acknowledging it. So it puts you back into that spin, but you can get out and you can rebuild. Not that the hole is going to still be there. The empty chair is always going to be there. But you learn to go on and create new traditions with the family that you've got. And that helps them.
Well, and just that feeling, like you called it, disenfranchised grief. And that just, that so resonates. And I hope that for the people who are listening, who are seeing themselves in what we're talking about here, because this has to be a very lonely place to be as well. So I hope they're realizing they are not alone. As you said, you work with many families over the years, many parents, many people, many family members who are in the ripple effect, not in the core relationship, but who are bearing the results and living the grief of that ripple effect, to help them know that they're not alone, that they're able to, to move through this, that there's some hope, right? That's got to be a powerful message, that there's some hope, not based on the core relationship, but some hope for your life going forward.
And there are people who have gotten back, and this is like a secret, and it's something that a lot of parents can't even muster the strength to do. And it's sucking up to the narcissist. If I want to see my grandchildren, I have to suck up to them, pretend I like them, get the hell out, and then barf in a bag. Like they will do that, and they do sometimes, not all the time. Sometimes you could suck up to them and they don't care. They're in that mode. Other times their fragile ego is like, oh, they like me, and they can be conned emotionally into a place of acceptance. But we have to remember right now, the current numbers are 25% of adult children are estranged from their parents in the United States. I did a webinar, two webinars right before the book launch, and I had people from 18 countries. This isn't a United States problem. This is a global way that the younger generation is morphing the advice that I was giving on my YouTubes to adult children with narcissistic parents. They're just making the good parents, see, they're a narcissist. She says we have to go no contact. They're taking the medical terms that are designed against them, but now using it against the parents. So it's a twisted thing, but you're not alone, 25%. And if we look at the stats for narcissism, and in my book, I said a narcissist doesn't hurt one person, they hurt at least 10. That's 250 million people in the United States have been in some kind of exchange with a narcissist, right? That's a lot of people. Between narcissism and the estrangement rise, this is a snowball going down the hill. I think we've just begun.
Well, and they keep talking about the, just mental health issues being expanded and are causing more and more issues. And I don't know if it's awareness, but I do feel like that there's just been a lot more proliferation of at least the behaviors that we're talking about. But we've mentioned several times during the episode, and you just were talking about the webinar series and your YouTube. So let's get into the book. Let's get into the resources you have available, because you are, if nothing else, and there's a lot that you are, but you are a plethora of resources.
I do have a lot. I have blogs going out. I have one specific video that people find me from. Some parents come and say they've watched it 10 times, sent it to their children, to their friends. I have a YouTube channel that, because the estranged parents are on my mailing list and opening 67% of the time going, more, I need more, I need more. I'm writing more blogs. I'm making more videos about it. And I changed from 10 years of running women's groups twice a week to running parent groups. And that has changed everything. Almost every parent has had a change or a shift after the 6 weeks with me. It's phenomenal. They've gotten more empowerment. They're not alone. They have answers. They've got strategies, and they know what not to do. And that changes everything. So between my coaching, between this, whatever it is, there's so much stuff out there, but I'm here. I'm always here.
Yeah, you have been, and we know how many people you've helped. First thing I have to ask for, because I know everybody's out there, can you send the link to that video that people watched 10 times? Yeah, they're going to want that. I'll put it in the show notes, everyone, so that you can find it very easily. And you also, are you doing any more webinars?
Not at the moment. I am going to be doing them after the new year. I have a whole bunch of scheduled things. I've got one night events to learn how to trust again. And I've got all that October, November. So I'm going to drip them back in January.
Perfect. So that'll all be on the website, which I will also have links to. But now let's hone in on the book. Tell everybody about the book, how they can find it, all the good stuff.
Sure. So it's called Estranged by Lies, How Narcissistic Power Partners Use Power and Control to Destroy Your Family. And I talk about, what will you do when you meet them? So many parents are like, I just want to see them again. I'm like, really? What would you do? Oh, I don't know. Well, how would you say it? What would you say? Would you, this is what you should say. I did things about when you're going to meet them for the first time. Are you going to meet them with a therapist? What to look at. And when the therapist is in the room with you, is the therapist supporting your child's view or your view? Is your child coming in angry? This is what you should do if they come in angry. If they're coming in and they're really shy and they don't want to talk anything, this is what you should do. I have scripts for writing apology letters and letters that are requested upon every single family member, never listened to, but requested, because a lot of times they story barf in the apology letter and it makes things worse. So it's like, no, you got to be clear. You've got to identify with their pain and so you've got all of those things, the emotional parts, the letter writing parts, the moving forward, how to tell people. That's a huge thing. There's so much shame that parents are embarrassed and they won't tell anyone. And that brings more shame when everybody's at Bunko showing pictures of their grandchildren and they're sitting there getting smaller and smaller because they can't even say it because they're so shamed. So how do we tell people? How do we move forward? What do we do? How do we not make another mistake? This is what their behaviors are. If you're seeing this, do this. So it's 300 pages of a lot of help.
I can imagine people out there right now, just tapping away on the keyboard or on their phone, trying to figure out how they can get a hold of it. So Amazon, Audible, Kindle.
All
of the good things, people.
Yeah. But this is, I wrote 2 books at the same time. The big book, she doesn't even know about this, but there's a second book. And this was designed because in the groups, I had a mom and her adult son who's quoted in the big book saying, I feel like I lost my best friend. He said it in the group. And I'm like, can we put that in the book? He was like, but how do I tell my brother he's being abused? Because if you say she's gaslighting you or she's doing this or she's a narcissist, you get shut off. So I made a handout for the groups. And then I wanted it to get in the book. It was too late for layouts. It wasn't worth doing it. So it became another one. And I morphed it not only about estrangement, but I morphed it into if someone is co-parenting or they're in a relationship with us, all these things. They don't see it, but you do. How to gently plant the seed, naming abuse. It's these little tiny phrases that, they come to you. They don't come to you and go, I think my wife's abusing me. They come to you and they say, I don't understand why my wife gets so upset when I want to go out with my friends. I miss you guys. What would you say there? Could you say something like, hey, you guys were so close, or our friendship has been forever. Has she been saying this for a long time? Or, you're planting seeds for them to go, this isn't normal. So that's what that is. And it kind of complements it. The people who are getting this one are like, I wish the reviews on this one are, I wish I knew this. I wouldn't have been estranged because I would have been able to do it differently.
All right, everybody. So 2 books to get. I'll have links to both books. There's a surprise bonus book here, everyone, I didn't even know about. But as always, I'll have links for you in the show notes so that you can just easily find everything. But if you can't find it there, give them the website.
Narcissistabusesupport.com. Not narcissistic, which is proper, but someone had that URL. Support, and it gets you there.
Okay. And that I will also have that in the show notes for you, everyone. Well, Tracy, I thank you for coming back on, but more importantly, I love having you. I love being able to share the work that you're doing, but I know that the work that you're doing takes a really difficult toll on you and anyone who works in this space. It's a very traumatic place to dwell. And you are helping so many people. I commend you for the work that you do. I know it comes from, a really passionate place in you to help people in these very painful places in life. So thank you for doing that. And thank you for coming on and sharing it with my audience.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love seeing you.
I know that's the positive side of a difficult paradigm, but unfortunately there's enough of this in the world that I'm sure your next book, I know you probably just finished writing these 2, but when the next book comes or the next anything, I'd love to have you back on again. My listeners love to learn from you. So thank you. Before we wrap up, let's pull out the golden nuggets from today's powerful conversation with Tracy Malone. First, estrangement isn't always about what you did or didn't do as a parent. More often, it's the result of manipulation, gaslighting, and control from a narcissistic partner. Second, you can't control the narcissist or your adult child's choices, but you can control yourself. And that begins with emotional regulation. Learning to calm the chaos that you are so rightfully feeling inside gives you strength when everything outside feels out of control. Third, awareness changes everything. Once you recognize the patterns of the narcissistic playbook, you can stop blaming yourself and start building boundaries that protect your peace. And finally, you are not alone. As Tracy reminds us, this is happening to so many loving parents, and there is hope for healing, even if reconciliation isn't possible right now. If you'd like to learn more, pick up Tracy's new book, Estranged by Lies: How Narcissistic Partners Use Power and Control to Destroy Your Family. The link is in the show notes, along with all the ways to connect with her directly. I'm Susan Guthrie, and I'll be back in our next episode with more insights, inspiration, and expert advice to help you move through your divorce and into your beyond. Thank you for joining me today on the Divorce and Beyond podcast. I hope you found some information and inspiration to help you on this journey. Please join me every Monday at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for a new episode. And if you like the show, please take the time to subscribe and leave me a 5-star review on iTunes. You can also find more information on the website at divorceandbeyondpod.com, where you'll find links to the YouTube channel, transcripts of the episodes, and other bonus content. So I'll see you next week to help you move through your divorce and beyond.